All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports, please.
January 10, 2022, present members of Council City of Wilmington, ladies and gentlemen, we, your Public Safety Committee, by virtual meeting with remote participation, to whom was referred ordinance number 21055 entitled, an ordinance to amend chapter 37 relating to the removal of abandoned vehicles within the city, have given this ordinance careful study and recommend council vote on it accordingly. Respectfully submitted, those members present: Councilwoman Walsh, Councilwoman Gray, Councilman Johnson, Councilman Spadola, and President Congo.
Mr. President, I move the committee report be received, recorded, and filed.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that the committee reports be received, recorded, and filed on the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. At this time, we will have our treasurer's report, please.
January 20th, 2022. Total investment, $503,146,757.72. Total cash on hand, $11,788,128.07. Grand total, $514,934,885.79, submitted by Dwayne Sims, City Treasurer.
I move the treasurer's report be received, recorded, and filed.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that the treasurer's report be received, recorded, and filed on the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. I'd also like to recognize Councilwoman Harley, who has joined us.
So noted.
I will accept the motion to accept all non-legislative business.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second to accept all non-legislative business on the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. I would just like to acknowledge some of the resolutions from council members. All of council, we would like to recognize and thank Cozy Corner for their 100th anniversary of serving their customers here in the city of Wilmington. Also from all of council, a sympathy resolution for Raymond King, and also from all of council, a sympathy resolution for Edward Anderson. From Councilwoman Fields, a sympathy resolution for Patricia Ann Brown. From Councilwoman Harley, sympathy resolutions for Bernie Wilkins, Letha Allen, and she would also like to recognize Dwight L. Davis. From Councilwoman Oliver, sympathy resolution for Taryn M. Jackson and Sonny Perry. From Councilwoman Walsh, sympathy resolutions for Rose.
The one that happened yesterday with the gold at the top.
For Rose Cuocolo. Sympathy resolution for Michael Kelly, for Colin Flaherty, Richard Glibline, James E. Strawbridge, and Terrence J. Patton Sr.
Mr. President,
Yes, Councilwoman Walsh.
I just wanted to point a couple of things out with these sympathy resolutions.
Yes.
Cozy Corner is going to invite all of council to a 100th anniversary party when COVID lets up a little bit. And they'd very much like to receive that in person. Rose Cuocolo was just an involved lady on the west side who lived a very nice life, very older life, but they used to be associated with Peter Papa's market. Michael Kelly has Peter Pop's Market over on 7th Street.
Point of order. When do we start doing that?
Well, I'm doing it tonight because these are people that I think should be recognized and people who should know who they're voting for. If you want me to stop, I'll stop.
You're fine. You may continue, Councilwoman Walsh.
Thank you, Council President. Michael Kelly as everyone might know, is one of the oldest families in Wilmington, and they own the oldest continuous family-owned bar in the United States, and that's Kelly's Logan House on Delaware Avenue. For those of you who know the song on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, Colin Flaherty, as a Wilmingtonian born and bred here, actually appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, being carried out of the Republican National Convention in Miami, whatever year that was. Richard Gebline was a Superior Court judge, and the other two gentlemen, Mr. Strawbridge and Mr. Payton, were both Wilmington police officers retired. So thank you for letting me have that time.
You're welcome, Councilwoman Walsh. At this time, we will move to public comment. Again, as a friendly reminder, there is a Google sign up, the link in the chat for anyone who would like to speak. You have around 3 minutes to give your comments. Please direct any comments to myself, to me as president, and not directly to any other council member. And once you have around 30 seconds left, we will give you a friendly reminder. At this time, first, we do have a few people who have signed up for public comment. First, we will go to Angela Lamana. Angela Lamana, WITN, is Angela Lamana still with us?
We do not see her on the call.
Okay.
If you are present, can you please raise your hand?
Now I'm scrolling through. I don't see her name.
No.
All right. We will go to Christina Kelly. Christina K.
Hi, thank you very much, President Congo, for an opportunity to speak tonight. I hope to stay within the 3 minutes. I am dealing with COVID, so please just be patient with me if I go a few seconds over. I just wanted to briefly touch on item number 0129 tonight, in calling for a vote of no confidence for Chief Tracy and Wilmington Police Department practices. To start, Chief Tracy has spoke repeatedly about how great his department has handled transparency and how they have nothing to hide as they follow current policies and procedures. Yet every news article, case specific, homicide, shootings, etc., since Tracy has joined WPD has included the phrase, "No further information will be provided." I believe this alone goes to show the exact opposite of what Tracy has stated over and over again to this council and to the community members. Lying is never acceptable conduct from a law enforcement officer, but especially not of the chief. Sir, you set the precedent for the officers you employ, and your less than honest behavior has told them it's just fine to lie, to misrepresent the truth. And yes, even the smallest lies create a culture of dishonesty and distrust. The chief has had to be officially asked to hold press conferences to keep the community informed and involved, yet regularly attends photo opportunity events with the mayor and primarily BPG, rather than prioritizing communicating with those he is sworn to protect and serve. This chief also has a history of dishonesty, including lying by omission during his retirement in Chicago, at which time he informed his superiors that he was leaving for, quote, an executive level security position with a private company, while neglecting to disclose his acceptance of the role of chief for Wilmington Police Department. Chief Tracy's retirement itself came while Chicago PD and himself, as well as his superior officer, were in the middle of its own scandal following the court-ordered release of disturbing video, which showed an officer with CPD shooting a 17-year-old child 16 times, which sounds quite familiar to me. To close, however, I'd like to read a quoted portion of a Chicago Tribune article about Tracy's retirement, which was dated 1/5/2016, as well as a quick snip of a Chicago Sun article. During Tracy's tenure, the department integrated more technology with its crime-fighting strategies. These included the 2 degrees of association strategy, which identified more than 400 people across the city who were most likely to get shot or to shoot somebody. Now, from the Chicago Sun article, the results of those strategies were mixed in 2015. There were more than 470 homicides in Chicago, greater than any year since 2012, and more than 2,900 shooting victims. Still, other types of crime were down in 2015, and the year-end murder total was lower than when McCarthy, Tracy's superior officer, and Tracy took office in 2011. Now, these statements alone sound almost identical to what we heard Tuesday in the special public safety meeting, where Chief Tracy praised his own performance. Quite honestly, the last thing this city needs is more profiling of young Black and brown men and more dishonesty from those in leadership roles. I think it is beyond time for Robert Tracy's reign of terror to end, and I fully support a vote of no confidence based on the last 5 years of failure to improve anything in this city. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have J. Renee Teague.
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us.
All right, yes, thank you for letting me on. I think the previous woman that spoke, Christina Kelly, definitely said a mouthful. But I would just like to second what she said and also say that I support President Congo's resolution for a vote of no confidence with the Wilmington Police Department Chief Tracy and the Wilmington Police Department's practices. Thank you.
Thank you. And excuse me 1 second. Next we have can't find my name. Excuse me. 6:30. All right, Keandra McDowell.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Keandra McDowell. I would like to say that I third exactly what Christina Kelly said, as well as Ms. Teague. As we all can see that since Chief Tracy has been in his position, nothing really has been being good in Wilmington or Delaware, period. He is a disgrace. When you go around my communities and ask people if they know who the chief is, they do not. And that's a problem. I call him a field mouse because a mouse you can never find. And that's just what he is. It's despicable and disgusting that he won't even communicate with people in the community. I have put in phone calls to speak with the chief, never get nothing back from him. He doesn't want to work with anybody in the community. And then to find out that we don't even have five Black people or brown people in any higher representation or any higher field in the police department is even more disgusting. Like when I went to school, when the teachers used to tell me, you got to do this, you got to do that when you get older, it was hard for me to understand them because how can they tell me what to do when they go home, they don't have to deal with what I go home to. But once I had a teacher who knew my struggle, knew my hurt and my pain, I accepted it. And that's when I began to listen and change, the things that I was doing. How do you expect us to fill out an application to be a Wilmington police officer when none of them don't even look like us? It's disgusting. Wilmington is made up of Black people, Black and brown people. It's disgusting. I don't really know what to say. I'm just disgusted and he needs to go. I'm willing to do protests, sit-ins, whatever I have to do to get him out of here. Thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Hanif Salam.
Good afternoon. As stated, my name is Hanif Salam, resident of the First District. I come today, first, thank you, Council President Congo, for allowing me to speak. Today, I would agree with my fellow constituents and ask City Council to vote yes and pass the resolution of no confidence in Chief Tracy. Our police department is underperforming, and since Chief Tracy has been in place, we have watched crime, specifically violent crimes, increase on his watch without a plan of change to do so. While that is very important, that is not the only legislation on the agenda today. There is also an ordinance that will allow for the removal of abandoned cars from personal property. I plead with City Council to vote no to this ordinance, as I think it still needs time to be discussed and planned. I learned in the Public Safety Committee meeting that a lot of the language for this ordinance was mimicked from county and state law, when the city is very different. We already have a police department that has a use of force issue. So to allow them to come on private property to collect these vehicles may bring about problems. While I do understand that abandoned cars is an issue for the city, I think that council can take some time to renegotiate this ordinance so that residents like myself would not be caught up in it when you may be trying to just get a vehicle repaired or things of that nature, specifically if it is on private property and the car is not on the street. Lastly, I would just like all of my city council members to please just take time and begin to look into the administration's budget and use of funds. It is baffling to me that, if I remember correctly, that when we got CARES Act funds from the county, our mayor said that he was going to use that money to be able to pay personnel, firefighters, and police officers, which is great, but we already had an approved budget to take care of that cause. And then when we just received ARPA funds last year, the first receipt of those funds went directly to balancing the budget. And I'm having a hard time trying to understand what was left to be balanced if we already had an approved budget. We already had CARES Act funding that was going to pay for personnel. And then now we took, I believe it was 20+ million to balance the budget. We definitely need to take a look into our funds and find a way that we can make significant investments in our communities so that we can have safer communities and we can make investment into our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Zakia Minka.
Good evening. My name is Zakia Minka. I live in the First District. And I just want to comment about the removal of the abandoned cars. And I heard Hanif, what Hanif is saying. And actually, Hanif is my nephew. And we're on opposite sides. But I think if they look at the entire legislation and how it's written out, they'll see that they don't just come on your property and remove your car. There's a process that they go through, and it seems that the process is fair to me. And another thing is, I understand that sometimes people want to get their cars fixed up or whatever, and some people are saying that it's a sentimental value. The way I'm seeing it is that if it's a sentimental value, you would want to protect it from the weather. So if it's that important to you, why not get a garage? Or if you have a garage, clear the stuff out of your garage and put your car in the garage so it cannot be seen. And I believe that another option would be to maybe build a tall fence around your yard. Because the reason I say that is because one of our residents did that. His vehicle was important to him. And when the people started complaining, what he did was he built a fence around his backyard so that you cannot see his junky car. And another option is like, okay, if it's been there for years and years and years and nothing has been done. I mean, there's this thing that says we buy junk cars. So why don't you just make a little bit of money off of your junk cars? But those cars, even in those private driveways, it's an eyesore, and it adds to the blight of the city. So, and I don't understand why people expect that you could come to the city and do whatever you want. And I mean, you can't go anywhere else and do it. And somewhere else you do that, they're going to go take you through the process, and they're going to tow the car if you don't respond. But if you don't want your car towed, you respond. Either put it in a garage, hide it with a fence, or sell it for scraps. And thank you so much for listening to me. And I urge the city council to pass this legislation. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to remind everyone who may want to sign up for public comment that there is a Google Form sign up link in the chat. So please try to use that feature so that you will be recognized and we can hear your public comment. Next, we have Ricky Smith. Mr. Smith.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Ricky Smith. I live in the first. I am in support of the presidency, council, and others, and no confidence for the chief and his administration. I think the whole crew should go. There was an incident a couple of weeks ago. That young man got stopped and was thrown to the ground. And while the dog was tearing his arm apart, the officer stood on top of his legs because the dog was tearing his nerves out of his arms. We have the pictures and stuff. It's bad to see. And the charge he was charged for is something like hinder a peace or some old stupid charge and stuff they put on him. But this young man got his whole arm tore out by his muscle. His nerve is damaged now. And to see when the nerves start making the leg jump up and down, to see an officer over 6 feet stand on this man's leg and nothing is done with these officers, and 5 officers sit back and laugh at him. Then the drug officer come to him and start teasing him and tell him, hey, such and such, I heard that the dog got to you. That's good. The police department's out of control, and we as the taxpayers of this city and the Black community need to get together and ask for more than we got. We can't continue to sit around and let our people get hurt. That's the biggest problem I got with the city. Council is good. Council is trying to do their best. But when you got we had police department out of control years ago, and then President Baker didn't want to move him or nothing, and the situation got worse and worse and worse with Mayor Baker at the time. The other thing I could say is that the mayor was his pick. He supported the police chief real good. Now, Mr. Mayor, let the man go. Let's start over. Let's have a new Wilmington. The way you tearing down the houses and stuff, let's tear down the police department and let's have a new start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Teresa.
Hi, good evening. My name is Teresa Oliver, and I'm calling tonight and being a part of this as I do not agree with the ordinance regarding the vehicles, where someone can come onto your private property and remove a vehicle because they feel that you should be able to afford to not only have your vehicle, you may be in the middle of getting it fixed, or you may be in the middle of not having a job. We did just come out of a pandemic, and a lot of people who just 2 years ago are still without jobs, are still trying to make ends meet, are still trying to make sense of what this pandemic how this pandemic has changed people's lives. And so of all the times in the world, when everything is still chaotic, how can someone say to you, well, it's your vehicle, and if you want it, and if it means something to you, that you should have the money to get it fixed? There are people out here still trying to make ends meet. There are people out here still trying to make sense of how to pay their bills. How can you allow somebody to come onto your property and take your vehicle? Who says that they can afford to get a large fence put around? I'm against coming onto somebody's private property and taking a vehicle. Yes, if it's on the street, if it's just abandoned, if it looks a mess, of course. But coming onto my property where I have a Mercedes Benz, who I don't want it to be taken, but yes, it was involved in an accident right when the pandemic happened, and I'm going to leave it there on my property until I can afford to get it fixed. Who gives you the right to tell you that you can come onto my property and take it because you feel like I should be able to afford to get it fixed? That's not okay. So unless the city has funds where they're able to help people who live in the city to make things happen, like my friend Hanif was just explaining how the budget doesn't even make any sense. Instead of always trying to hurt the residents, why don't you try and figure out how you can help them? So I'm totally against coming onto my property or any other property. Who says that somebody can afford to get a garage for $180? It just is baffling to me how we think it's okay for you guys to pass an ordinance to come onto my property. That part right there has me floored, and I'm totally against it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Kobe Owens.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you so much. I'm speaking tonight in support of 0129 ordinance, the vote of no confidence. On behalf of the NAACP Policing Reform Committee as their chair, we're in full support of this. And again, I just want to reiterate, now is the time that we take steps to really heal our city, to make sure we have community empowered policing, and have a police force that is reflective of our city, that assures fairness for our officers who are on the force so that they have an opportunity to move up in the ranks, but also make sure that every civilian here in the city of Wilmington feels safe. So on behalf of the NAACP's policing reform, we are in support of this resolution.
Okay, thank you. And right now, our last community member to sign up for public comment is Brandon Fletcher.
Hello, thank you, City Council, for allowing me to speak today. I am giving public comment in support of the resolution expressing a lack of confidence in the Chief of Police, Robert Tracy, and expressing the desire of council for the city's administration to engage in actionable police policy and procedural reform immediately. I was at the special public safety meeting, and I think that meeting kind of displayed the issues of the police chief himself and the Wilmington Police Department as a whole underneath his leadership. I think it was very alarming to hear the lack of diversity in Wilmington Police Department, considering that we are a majority minority city. And I think it was even more frustrating to see no substantive plan by the mayor, by the police chief, that was shared with council and the public with regards to this issue. I'd also like to thank the sponsors and co-sponsors, the Black Caucus of Wilmington City Council, for coming together in support of this resolution so that we can move forward. I think calling him out is one thing. A pink slip would be a lot better so that we could start from new build up and create real oversight to address police violence at its root before more and more people are killed, abused under the hands of Wilmington Police Department. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. I believe we have one more person who's just signed up. Alma Lewis.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I am in support of your resolution to vote against the Wilmington Police. I just feel like the force of use, the force of the wrongful way they just go about doing things, it has to stop. If we don't come together as a community, again, you guys are doing what y'all supposed to. If we don't have the cops to back us or even to help us, it's not going to work. So we need to stand up and confront the police head on. We cannot excuse or ignore the fact that all these things are going on. So that's all I have to say. You guys have a good night.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
you. Again, we just like to thank all of our residents who joined us virtually and who signed up for public comment. Please continue to engage with us during our council and our committee meetings. Just want to make sure we don't have anyone else. All right, this time we are going to go to legislative business. Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Gray.
Oh, sorry, I'm here. Mr. President, I have an ordinance to present and call for the third and final reading.
Ordinance 21055, agenda 0111, an ordinance to amend chapter 37 relating to the removal of abandoned vehicles within the city.
Mr. President, I have a substitute to present in lieu of that ordinance.
Substitute number 1 to ordinance 21055, revision 1 to agenda 0111, an ordinance to amend chapter 37 relating to the removal of abandoned vehicles within the city.
Mr. President, I move that this be known as an enacting clause of the substitute ordinance and call for a yea and nay vote.
Second.
Properly moved and second, that be known as the enacting clause of the ordinance or the substitute ordinance and called for a yea or nay vote on the question.
Well, I want to clarify something. This ordinance is not based on state and county laws. The state had a law that prevented the Wilmington police from towing cars. So that's the reason the state is mentioned. And the county has a similar law. And most jurisdictions have a law that you cannot leave an inoperable car on private property. It's a nuisance. It's a blight. It makes the neighborhood look blighted. It's a hazard for children. It attracts animals. And everyone's speaking of their personal concern of their personal car being taken off of their private property. What about all your neighbors? I have, I think it's like 15 addresses that have abandoned cars on the property, and the neighbors have been complaining about looking at them and the disruption. Some of them are blocking alleys, some of them are blocking driveways. So that I'd like to hear comments from council, and I'll address them as they're said. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Again, Councilwoman Gray, you will be given the opportunity to speak last, since this is your ordinance. First, we have Councilwoman Darby.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I wanted to speak to this legislation. I am not in support of it in this form. One of the main reasons is I do not believe Police should be given any power to go on people's private property with their issues with their use of force towards Black and brown people in this city. And even if we have rules, they don't follow rules and laws. Sometimes they don't even know what the rules and laws are. And they are in it, they cross the line all the time. Also, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And that's a big issue for me. And a lot of times people just don't have the funds, especially in a pandemic, to get their car fixed. And cannot afford all of the other things that one of our constituents recommended. And I think one of our other constituents addressed that. And I just think we're crossing the line on what the police or government has control over in regards to what assets they have to your private property. I actually don't have an abandoned vehicle on my property, but I live next door to someone who does. And I do not like seeing it. It is an eyesore, right? So I do understand those things. I would love for it to be moved, but I'm also a human. I understand he's a disabled elder, probably on a fixed income, so he's not able to get the car fixed or get the car moved or build a fence around it. So I know those things aren't possible. I would love to figure out another way to deal with abandoned vehicles, to deal with them, but not in this manner. I believe instead of penalizing people for being poor, not being able to move their car for whatever reason, to figure out ways to actually help people. And that is someone who is talking, who lives next to a blighted, abandoned vehicle. And I hate looking at it when I go in the backyard, but it's on his property and it's nothing I can really do. But I also don't want to see it taken from him if he needs to one day get it fixed and use it once he recovers from what happened to him. But that's my comment for tonight. I'm not in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also not in support of this legislation. I said a few things about it in the committee meeting, so I won't reiterate it, but I have spoken to Hanif on several occasions regarding this, and I understand where the sponsor is coming from with this. But as my niece has stated, some people just don't have it during this pandemic. I mean, you have several people I spoke to have children, and it's just hard. So I'm not going to reiterate it. I understand where the sponsor is coming from, but I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Spadola.
Thank you, Council President. I worked on this legislation with Councilmember Gray, and it was really initiated by a fierce community advocate, Ms. Zakia Minka, president of the East Lawn Civic Association, who cares deeply about her neighbors and the community there. And I took a walk and I saw the dire need for this legislation, because you could really see how it destroys the value of the longtime homeowners. And so these abandoned cars increase disparity of wealth in Wilmington. And by removing that blight, by removing the health hazard that these vehicles pose, it's a small step in a right direction. To speak to some of the public comments, the intent of this legislation is to, the vehicles that have been disabled for years. We're not talking you have a flat tire for a week and your car's getting towed. This is, vehicles that have busted windows, airbags deployed, flat tires. So this is, the scenario, the scary scenarios that some people might be painting in their minds. That is not what this legislation is intended to target. It will not. So, once this legislation is passed, I hope it will, I think we'll clean up some streets. And I think all the homeowners in East Lawn and where this is a problem will have an increase in property value. Councilmember Darby's property value will go up and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am in favor of this legislation because, as we know, the blight in our neighborhood contributes to a lot of the crime that does happen, because people see blight, abandoned homes, properties are not maintained, as people don't care and they don't pay attention. I also respect the fact that this is property, private property. Why can't I have my car here until I get it fixed? And for all the reasons stated. I just want to address a couple of things that I heard here tonight. These cars have been a problem pre-pandemic. And I understand if somebody recently during the pandemic or post has had a challenge or an issue, but remember also that the city wasn't operating and people were not doing any enforcement, including of traffic parking violations during the pandemic. So people have had time. And I know folks are trying to get back on their feet. But I want to refer to the actual details of the legislation. Right now, what I'm reading is expiration of your registration on your license plate. So we know that in Delaware, we can register a vehicle for up to 3 years and pay for that registration. So technically, someone could have a broken down vehicle from an accident or that they just need time to repair it for 3 years on their property or any time up to 3 years, and then an additional 30 days from the time that their registration expires. So I think there is some leniency in terms that people can have some time to fix these vehicles. The police are not going to come on your property in tow. They're going to call the towing company the city has a contract with, the same they do if someone's blocking a fire hydrant or has a parking violation that a vehicle needs to be towed for whatever reason, or it's been abandoned on the street. So I hear the concerns that people have, but this painting this picture of police pulling up on your property, taking your car, coming, basically in attack mode, that's not fair, because that's not really what happens. And I don't think that anyone should, paint it that way. And the city will be sending out a notice. And I think that the people, if you get a violation and for some reason you need more time, I'm sure that there could be some leniency. Reach out to the council member in your area, reach out to me, I'm at large, and we'll be happy to work with you. But I'm sorry, I'm hearing and I'm sympathetic to the concerns because I've been there. I've had an abandoned vehicle that I needed to fix up and it was on my property that I owned. But at the same time, we should not be allowed to contribute to the blight of our neighborhood because it's not fair to the neighbors who live there and have to look at this. As Councilmember Darby mentioned, she's being sympathetic to the needs of that neighbor, but at some point, some action needs to be taken. So if there's anything we can do to help, certainly there were some suggestions about maybe there's things that we can do to give some leniency so we're not just taking somebody's property. But please take this into consideration. We're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Either you want our neighborhoods to improve, either you want the blight to go away, do we want nice places to live, do we want your property values to go up, or do we keep tolerating and allowing the same things to continue? We can't. I mean, this is the kettle calling the pot black. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Yes, I can't sum it up better than I think Councilmember Cabrera, who I think really just hit all the points. Is we have to continue to progress forward as a city. We talk about justice reform, we talk about cleaning up our neighborhoods. They all work together, and there is a basis. I know it's private property, but you have to weigh the constitutional right to private property versus the public need. And there is urgent public need to clean up our neighborhoods. You see it throughout the West Side, the car shops and the homes that have them. It's just cars are everywhere and they're just sitting there. And as Councilmember Cabrera said, rightfully, this was pre-pandemic. This has been a problem in Wilmington. Same thing as dumping is a problem in Wilmington. So I think this goes in part with what we're doing. I mean, I think it's facts and circumstances. You can apply, work with the council member in your district, and also work with the police department to say, you know what, this is a vehicle. It might have been 3 years, but I'm going to fix it. So I think it's each case can stand on its own, but I think we need to move forward as a city.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Oliver, this is your second round of speaking.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Lastly, I heard something regarding the tow company that might work with us. I don't see that happening. The tow company down to the credit union on Market Street, they are city employees around there. If you park your car down there, by the time you come in and go out, that same company that works with the city of Wilmington is towing cars. We've had at least 10 members from members of the city of Wilmington who are city of Wilmington residents and work for the city. Their car is towed. This is how fast these tow people work. Even on 19th and Market at the dollar store, I had 2 seniors call me. It's like they sit out there and pray on this stuff. So I think it was another way to do this, because in the long term, they are going to, that tow company that hears that they're going to be able to go on people's property, get the right police officer, something is going to, I don't feel good about it. But as I said, I'm a no vote, but I just wanted to put that out so the public can know that I do think it's going to be some bigger repercussions about coming on somebody's property, and the tow company, they make a mint, tow your car, and you can't even get it back right now after a month, let alone somebody tow it with the police involved. And I just think it's going to root to something else, but I understand the concept, but I think it was another way to do it, but I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is this Councilwoman Walsh? Councilwoman Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the things I wanted to also point out about the legislation, it just doesn't deal with taking cars off of private property. The Tilton area and Cool Springs are 2 areas that at least several times a month, there are people that constantly block the driveways of the homeowners over there. And some of them have their garages underneath their houses too. So it's not a long drive, but the police department refuses to ticket them or to get rid of the cars because that's private property. So I think it adds them to a list of people that can get some relief for people constantly blocking the access to their own home. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Darby, this is your second round.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I also want to remind people that we have an issue with our towing company. There has been several articles in, detailing illegal towing and how predatory it is towards Wilmington residents, and especially Black and brown people. So I don't want people to forget that. Just in 2020 and 2021, there were several articles about that. So it doesn't make me feel comfortable if it's the police officers who partner with a predatory tow company to go on people's private property. So I just wanted that to be noted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Looking for any other council members' hands raised? Seeing none. Yes, this is a difficult resolution, difficult ordinance. I do understand the intent of it. I'm not sure if the ordinance speaks to a timeline. That could be rather confusing. I know it was mentioned about if the tags are expired. So I guess a scenario that I thought of is if my tags expire in 6 months and my car is on my private property after those 6 months, what happens? And what defines a blighted vehicle? That could also be a slippery slope unless there are specific definitions of what defines a blighted vehicle. Again, I do understand the intent, but it's just hard for me to support something that would allow us as a city to go on someone's private property and to and to remove their vehicle. And I do understand the concerns of our residents who want their block and their neighborhoods to be blight free. But it's just that this is going to be a hard one for me to support. At this time, I will return back to Councilwoman Gray for final comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, several things. For one, motor vehicle requires that all vehicles be registered. So there is a law that states if you have a car that's visible and it's not registered, you're illegal, whether it's on private property or public property. That was passed a couple of years ago. So when people say, so right there, that's an abandoned car, if the car is not registered. There's a whole definition, which I can't find at this second, that also explains what an abandoned car is. And one of the major definitions is that it cannot be operated on a public street. It's not operable. So those are the two major definitions of abandoned cars. They're not registered and it's not operable on a public street. This was not a rushed legislation. It's been over a year that I've been researching and looking into this. And I must say that East Lawn approached me last year, which we were in pandemic, but it was the beginning, with 13, I have it here, an email with 13 addresses of what we would define as abandoned cars. And that's a lot for a small community like East Lawn. So it's a major problem for them, and it is a citywide problem. And like Councilwoman Cabrera said, no one's going to be rushing on your property. I think even Councilwoman Oliver put forth an amendment during committee meeting to change the time that you have to respond from 7 days to 10 days. At that time, she was supportive, so I guess she's spoken to other people. But
no, never was supportive. Made a suggestion.
Okay, we changed the legislation, but that's about all I have to say. I mean, it's a no-win. There's enough abandoned cars and enough opportunity for it to be a detriment to the community. And also I know from other places that sometimes they're used for hiding contraband, not the owner of the car, but the kids in the neighborhood. They know it's an abandoned car. They can hide things there. They can play there. There's all type of detrimental aspects of having abandoned cars. And I understand that some people may not be able to fix their car, but if it's not registered, they're breaking the law anyway. I mean, this, and plus, as pointed out, this legislation has combined all the different ways cars can be towed. Like if a car is left on the street and no parking for over 24 hours, it can be towed. Like Councilwoman Walsh said, if you're parked in front of someone's private driveway, you can be towed. So it's not just towing cars on private property. Thank you. I call for a vote.
Please call for the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Darby,
No.
Councilwoman Oliver,
No.
Councilwoman Harley, excuse me, Councilwoman Harley, Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Field,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cabrera,
Yes.
Councilman Spadola,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Congo.
No.
7 yeas, 3 nays, and 2 absent.
Declared adopted. Any other legislation, Councilwoman Gray?
Nothing else this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Darby?
No, nothing this evening, Council President.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson, presenting on behalf of myself.
Council President, are we going out of order? I think Councilmember Oliver had a matter. or-
Yes, me. He's
Okay,
there.
I apologize. Thanks, Councilman Johnson. Councilwoman Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would officially like to, 1 second, I'm trying to get my paper here. Okay. Thank you. First, I would like to officially withdraw Ordinance 21048 tonight, Ordinance 21048. I would like to withdraw that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Next, I have, Mr. President, on behalf of Councilwoman Harley, who's running a little behind, I have an ordinance to present and call for the first and second reading.
Ordinance 22001, agenda 0124, in order to approve the removal of a portion of the North Pine Street located between East 6th and East 7th Streets from the official city map.
First reading of the ordinance.
An ordinance to approve the removal of a portion of North Pine Street located between East 6th and East 7th Streets from the official city map.
Second reading of the ordinance.
Mr. President, I move this be known for the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer it to Public Works Committee.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that be known as the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer to the Public Works and Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. That will be all.
Thank you. Councilmember Fields is not with us. Councilmember McCoy.
Nothing tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're just going to switch agenda items quickly. We are going to next go to Councilmember Field.
Nothing tonight, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Johnson, you have legislation. You have your legislation.
Yes, Mr. President. First, I guess we'll begin with just housekeeping matters. I have an ordinance to present and call for first and second reading. Agenda item 0125.
Just 1 second. Thank you, since I
Okay.
think we're changed out of order. Ordinance 22002, Agenda 0125, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the city's general obligation bond supplemental wetland park project series of 2022 WPCRF in order to provide the additional funds necessary for the city's wetland park project, providing for the sale of the bond and authorizing other necessary action.
First reading of the ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of the city's general obligation bond supplemental wetland park project series of 2022 WPCRF in order to provide the additional funds necessary for the city's wetland park project, providing for the sale of the bond and authorizing other necessary action.
Second reading of the ordinance.
Mr. President, I move that be known as the first and second reading in the ordinance and refer to the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that be known as the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer to the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have another ordinance to present for first and second reading.
Ordinance 22003, Agenda 0126, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the city's general obligation bond annual water mains improvement project, Series A of 2022 DWSRF, in order to provide funds necessary to finance capital projects of the city relating to various water main improvements throughout the city, providing for the sale of the bond to the Delaware Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and authorizing other necessary action.
First reading of the ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of the city's general obligation bond annual water mains improvement project, Series A of 2022 DWSRF, in order to provide funds necessary to finance capital projects of the city relating to various water main improvements throughout the city, providing for the sale of the bond to the Delaware Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and authorizing other necessary action.
Second reading of the ordinance.
Mr. President, I move that be known as the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer to the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that be known as the first and second reading of the ordinance and refer to the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
And lastly, Mr. President, I do have a resolution to present on your behalf.
Whoa.
Resolution 22001, Agenda 0129. Whereas on Tuesday, January 18, 2022, there was a special Public Safety Committee meeting to address questions and concerns by Wilmington City Council relative to various policing policy matters, such as Wilmington Police Department governance, operations, and accountability, WPD diversity, WPD use of grants and funding, WPD community response, and monitoring crime and strategy for violence prevention. At this meeting, it was alarming to hear the lack of diversity in WPD, considering the city of Wilmington's diverse population. Nonetheless, it was further disturbing to see no substantive action plan shared with council to address diversity, knowing that this has been a concern of this body of council. And whereas Chief Robert J. Tracy was hired April 14, 2017 as the City of Wilmington's police chief, Mayor Michael Persicki chose Chief Tracy in large measure because of his demonstrable technical and leadership skills, his reputation for fairness and building trust in the community, and his unmatched background in advanced policing strategies. Furthermore, Chief Tracy's salary was compensated to be similar with chiefs of large cities, but nonetheless, this is the highest salary paid for any city employee, including previous chiefs and mayors. Whereas crime and particularly gun violence continues to plague our city, Chief Tracy shared when hired, "I will work to build on the existing Wilmington partnership of police and community, which, when coupled with effective policing strategies, will help us reduce crime and improve community relationships." However, this concept was never transpired. The residents have complained about the lack of visibility of WPD police chief following major incidents in the city of Wilmington. And whereas this council asked the administration on numerous occasions to have a fully funded and operational citizens complaint review board with the goal of increasing transparency and policing with little movement. And whereas City Council has received numerous complaints from WPD staff concerning internal operating procedures, City Council stands united and supportive of WPD sworn officers who are urging for departmental improvement in order to better serve City of Wilmington residents. It is the intent of this council to see positive change in the departments, starting with departmental leadership to increase the morale of WPD. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the council of the City of Wilmington that this public body expresses a vote of no confidence in Wilmington Police Chief Robert J. Tracy and Wilmington Police Department current practices under his leadership. Be it further resolved, the council urges the City of Wilmington administration to take actionable steps as the executive branch of government to actively work with experts to reform Wilmington Police Department. Be it further resolved, this body recommends the administration engage in a national search to identify a third-party entity to conduct an audit of Wilmington Police Department operations and procedures to be completed within 90 days of passage of.
At this time, I move for this resolution to be received, recorded, and adopted by a yea/nay vote.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that this resolution be received, recorded, and adopted by a yea/nay vote on the question.
As this is I'm doing the introduction, Council President, I will defer until other of my colleagues speak. But just to put a finer point on it, I believe this is a measure that I think is more measured than other cities have taken. I'm a student of history. I'm a student of current criminal justice affairs, both locally and nationally. And other cities have defunded police departments and moved to remove whole departments. Wilmington City Council, some people want that, but I think that has not happened to this point. I think this is a measured approach. I think so. We have some demonstrable action, not just words, but action. And the citizens have been waiting for 5 years. So with that said, I will pass it off to you, Council President.
All right, thank you, Councilman Johnson. I appreciate that. Yes, this is important to me. This is important also to our community, as you heard during public comment, and also extremely important to our rank and file of the Wilmington Police Department. Chief Tracy has been extremely resistant to any ideas to increase diversity and transparency, and any ideas as far as police reform. So I want to make sure that people don't think that I'm blaming the chief or the police department for the crime in our city. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think that's a conversation that is much bigger than the chief and our police department. They do play a role, but it's definitely not his fault about the homicides in our city. but I do think that our chief needs to be more proactive and just more vocal about a plan, whether it's a plan to combat crime or a plan to increase diversity and a plan to really improve morale in his police department. It has fallen on deaf ears, not only from this session of council, but from my previous session when Chief Tracy first was hired. It was extremely difficult for Chief Tracy just to give us a plan to increase diversity. I believe we had to go through two or three council meetings of him requesting to begin another class. And all we wanted from him before we approved a new class, an academy, was to hear his plan to increase diversity. And he was extremely resistant, even just talking about giving us a plan to improve diversity. I've had numerous officers just talking about the morale is extremely low. A lot of us heard it firsthand on Tuesday when it lacks diversity, and especially in the higher rankings of our officers. And I just want Chief Tracy to do the right thing. I'm not trying to fire him. I'm not trying to defund the police. Some people may, but I want to give him an opportunity to do the right thing. And I think I have been extremely fair and extremely patient with Chief Tracy and giving him this opportunity, but he has not proven to me that he's willing to even have the conversation, because this conversation happened years ago. So this 5 years ago, to be exact. So this isn't a vote in support of me. This is a vote in support of our constituents, as we just heard, and especially from the officers in the Wilmington Police Department, who are extremely frustrated, who are extremely demoralized when they feel there isn't even an opportunity for them to advance. I know Chief Tracy said that more minorities need to apply for promotions, but there's no sample where that is even relevant, because they don't see people who look like them in higher positions. And when they do see them, their authority has been stripped by Chief Tracy. So again, I will come back with closing comments, but I do want to go to my council colleagues. First, we have Councilwoman Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am in support of this resolution, and I'm predominantly in support of it because I truly think that there are problems within the police department. And I think that we need a separate entity to come in and identify the problem areas and give us suggestions on how to improve them. I don't think it stops with the police chief. I think the administration has not really been supportive of any changes or any transparency also. They haven't given us the Citizens Complaint Review Board. So it doesn't stop with Chief Tracy and the police department, but I'm totally in support. And I think there was a time period added, hopefully in the resolution, that this can be accomplished rather than having to ask the administration over and over and over again to find the entity to do this research on the department. But the thing about diversity, I'm thinking that Black and brown individuals have other opportunities. Policing is not popular anymore. It's dangerous, and it's, like I said, it's not popular. And I think the police chief did give us a report every quarter on their efforts to recruit Black and brown people. And I think about the only way Wilmington is going to get a more diverse police department is to raise the salary, because we're in competition with the county and the state and the other jurisdictions. But so those are my comments, but I'm definitely in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am not speaking for or against this resolution this evening. I'm speaking against the legality of it, and that I was one of the ones, because of the lateness of this resolution, I think it should be put off to the next council meeting and have us voted up or down at that meeting, because right now it just doesn't smell or pass the smell test for FOIA. And instead of having it thrown out and then having to come back and do it, I think it would save a whole lot of people, a whole lot of time if we just did it at the next meeting. And I think transparency for the community would be better that way. And that's all I have to say. I'll be voting present. If you do insist on going through with this, and we do end up breaking FOIA, I'll be voting present on this evening.
All right, thank you. Councilman Spadola.
Thank you, Council President. To echo Council Members Walsh's concerns, this resolution didn't even hit my email box until 4:09 p.m. So we, for those working today, we barely had any time to even read it, let alone the public. I don't even think it was put on the agenda till this morning. So that's an utter lack of transparency. It's a major disservice to the public and to the council members. So, if it's even legal, I don't know anybody who can propose or be a proponent of transparency, they should not be a proponent of this, because that transparency is not this. I would have reached out to John Clarity's group, Coalition of Open Government, to get their opinion. But of course, I didn't have time because it just came out at the end of the day. So again, we're not able to really hear the public's opinion on this. We're not able to really dive into it. But if, in the short time I had to read it, I will say, WPD is facing the same issues that other cities are. Recruitment is a nightmare everywhere. Lack of diversity is a nightmare in every city. To simply pin it on the chief, I think that just is a major disservice. And really, I think the only vote of no confidence in terms of crime, the vote of no confidence should be against the court system that keeps putting career criminals back out onto the street so they can make more victims. Okay, WPD is locking them up. Just today, a person prohibited was caught with a gun. Okay, he was released on $2,500 cash secured bail. Okay, so that's where the vote of no confidence should be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Dory.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I want to hit on the piece about transparency, and I want to make this very clear. Since I've been on council for about a year, there has been numerous legislations from that did not fit into the window of allowing council people to review legislations, taken off, put on, because I've been complaining about it. If you ask staff about how can I be prepared as a council person if we keep adding legislation at the last minute. And I find it really funny that now we have this piece of legislation and now you want to talk about transparency. How sway. But another thing I want to hit on is that I'm really just here for the solutions. We already know that the police department, when it comes to Black and brown people, and especially here in the city of Wilmington, that they're killing us at high rates. The violence towards the community is high, the abuse and the brutality. So we know these things, and we know a lot of the things inside of the police department needs to be fixed. Council, we don't know exactly what that is, but we know there's a problem. And our last public safety meeting, not the special one, but the original one that's scheduled every month, we had a national expert come and give us a presentation about police reform work that he has done across the country. So they cannot argue that they don't have the resource, that they don't have a person, they don't know where to go. City Council has the answer for them. We have the person who's willing to work with the police department, work with the community, work with the businesses in our community or whatever, and say, how do we do reform in our city to build community relations between police officers and the community? Because that is on the police officers to make sure that they build proper community relations with our community and increase that. So what I think is so key today is that I just find it funny that all of a sudden we're worried about transparency when that hasn't been a thing for the whole year and a month that I've been on council in regards to legislation being on the agenda for council meetings. So I'm asking for, and I'm supporting this legislation because I want Wilmington Police Department to get an outside entity independent from our city, our state, to come in and analyze and assess our police department and then provide us with the recommendations to improve our city and improve our police department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand the frustration because I also feel it of leaders, because when this happens in our community, and this meaning the lives that we're losing, the shootouts in broad daylight, and it used to be very targeted. Now it's random and people are out in the public and innocent people are getting shot, children, and it is disturbing. It's very disturbing. So I do understand, and I do not diminish the frustration, the anger that people feel. When I look at what's happening, not just in our city, but across the nation, there is a trend. But I know that people really care about what happens in their neighborhood, where they live, maybe more so than what happens on the other side of town. It used to be that these things were in targeted areas. Now it seems to be anywhere and everywhere, even in the neighborhoods that people felt they could be safe, that you're not going to have a stray bullet come through your window. It's happening in those neighborhoods as well. So we just can't say that it's obsolete to one area. We can point fingers, or we can try to find solutions, and we can express our frustration. My frustration is that I feel that if there was more communication, if people are being brought up to date to the efforts of what's happening, that we wouldn't be here, and maybe there'd be more understanding. At the same time, we could be working closer together on prevention. There's a lot when you look at the root of what causes this violence in our city, and how do we go about providing solutions. People do hold us accountable. And it's like, what can we do? In the words of Chief Pratcher back in the day when he said, tell me where the next shooting is going to be, and we will have the police there to prevent it. Councilman Spadola hit on something, and he's talking about today's news. I saw this in the news maybe 2 weeks ago, where a gentleman was arrested selling fentanyl. He was arrested, released on bail. He was caught again 2 days in a row, back to back, selling fentanyl again. What we really need to be doing is holding our judicial system accountable. I have access to the press releases that the police sent out. I read them. I see how many guns they're taking off the street. I see what they're doing. Today, one of my constituents said, I will say this, that over in the Hilltop, I see the police car parked out there, and man, I haven't seen any drug dealing. I haven't seen anything going down. I got to say, and she said,
order. Can we say in a resolution, please, Mr. President? Please, Mr. President.
Oh.
Can we speak to the
point of order? Maria has the floor. Point of order, Council President. Maria has the floor.
Excuse me, everyone. Excuse me. Thank you. Yes, Maria. Well, Councilwoman Corbetti may continue to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And that constituent pointed out how she praised the police because they're there doing their job. And the point that I'm making is, I see them. They're doing the job. They're doing the best they can. They're making the arrest. People are being released. Can we do better? Yes. I'm not going to support this simply because I feel that there's more going on. But what I will say to the chief and to the mayor's office, as I said publicly at the meeting that Councilwoman Walsh headed, the public safety meeting, is what I need you to do is do a better job communicating with us, the people who the constituents speak with. Do a better job of communicating with the public. Let us know exactly what you're doing and what your efforts are, because when, as noted, there is no comment, or we can't give any more information, or there's no reaching out into the community to really speak to people and let them know what's going on, this is what happens. People are going to band and say that they don't confide in you. There's going to be a vote of no confidence. People are going to hold you accountable. I'm going to refrain and vote no if we proceed on this evening. But please note that I, as a council member, am very concerned and would like to hear more communication. Please let me know what the efforts and what's going on. And if I deduct and say, hey, they're not doing what they need to do, then you know what? Like everyone else, I will hold the chief and anyone else in leadership accountable, because guess what? Our constituents are holding us accountable. So we need to work together to find solutions, not point the finger, but also let's let people know what we are doing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I had a problem with that hand. I just wanted to make you aware that, well, make everyone aware that I will be in support of this legislation. I do believe that my name is on there as a co-sponsor. And the reason being has nothing to do with the personality of our chief of police. I have spoken many times to Chief Tracy. He has, responded respectfully and made certain that he let me know that he received whatever email or whatever that is. But when it came to having a conversation about what the next steps are, can we try this? Can we try that? Those conversations that Councilwoman Cabrera actually talked about, we've been having those conversations pretty much for the past I've been involved at least almost 3 years. And the reason I support this legislation is because it's actually giving us a way forward. Okay, if this is not working, then we need to get someone from outside to tell us why this isn't working and how we can move forward in it. Like I stated, this is not about a personality thing. This is about making certain that we can make Wilmington Police Department the best it can be. I'm like, when it comes to the police, those gentlemen in blue that I come in contact with, I haven't had any issues. I said, but guess what? I am actually usually not the person that they're chasing. Those who are in the community or whatever, having issues, whatever, that they're being targeted, they may want to see a change or how everything is conducted within that location on 4th and Walnut Street. So to me, I feel like this is the right step. And I just wanted to make certain that I was heard.
Okay, thank you. Just want to see if any other council members who haven't spoken yet have a chance to speak before I circle back to those who already have.
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am in support of this. I have to agree with my colleague, Councilwoman McCoy. This is not about any personalities. This is just about some transparency. As she stated, and no one knows better than Councilwoman Harley, we have been having and Chief of Staff Daniel, meetings at the meeting. I'm not going to get into a long spiel. I am in support of this and I live it. It's in my district. It's in the community I've been raised in. Southbridge, East Side, West Side, North Side. I can go on and on. And as you stated, meeting with some of the police officers out the Monday Club, police officers pulling you over. This is not about personality. This is about a toxic police station that individuals have pulled us over and talked to us about. So all this other stuff, I mean, it's not about no one person. This thing is bigger than us. And when I hear about Captain Nikhil talking about leaving or whatever, and he helped raise me and I love him, it's something going on. As Councilwoman Darby said, as Councilwoman Harley said, we don't know what it is, but something down there is going on. And I am in full support of this. And it's not nothing about anybody's personality, but that's all I have to say on my first round. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Harley.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I basically ditto the remarks of Council Member Johnson, especially as it related to how this legislation is basically about trying to improve and about accountability, mainly from my perspective. I heard a council member mention about haven't heard enough from the community. The community's been talking for the last 2 years. I personally, have shared information. I've reached out to the decision makers to basically make them aware that there needs to be more done as it relates to our community. The community has been talking and talking loud, and I get it that every council member may not be getting the same feedback. I get it that some of our other council members may not be hearing the same conversations or getting in the same conversations. I get that. And apparently they're not hearing the same thing that some of us are hearing. And it's been going on for more than 2 years. Solutions have been presented, and there have been a number of ways that we've just been waiting. And I think the biggest thing and the main thing that I hear a lot is, when is our chief going to stand up, speak up, show up, or share, what is going on with the crime. So this has nothing to do with Chief Tracy. I was one that voted for Chief Tracy to come on board. I was one that voted for Chief Tracy to get a raise. And I still believe that our police department can do better. So for me, for the record, this is about accountability. I believe that this legislation basically is going to be supportive of us supporting the community, being the advocates, being the legislators that we were elected and voted to be, to bring about change. This is only about change. It's not trying to throw anybody on under the bus, make anybody look bad. But as for Michelle Harley, it's just about accountability and want to be taken serious about bringing about the change. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Okay, next we're going to go to our second round. Councilwoman Walsh. This is your
Thank you.
second round.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take back what I said in my other statement, quite frankly. As I said, I am not speaking on the pros or the cons on this particular resolution. I am speaking on whether this council has been given legal advice that we are violating FOIA if we have a vote on this evening, so that if we go forth on this, talk about following instructions or talking about following what you're supposed to do. If you deliberately violate FOIA, there are repercussions down the line about what happens when you do that. And for that, I think we should just ask that this be put on the next agenda and vote it up or down at that meeting, because there isn't something that is in such a hurry that this could not be put on an agenda within 6 hours. And for that reason, I'm not going to vote present. As far as I can remember, I don't recall ever voting present in my life. So I will be voting no on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. For your second round of comment, Councilwoman Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a resolution. I'm wondering what FOIA is going to have to do with this. It's just an opinion. I mean, I'm just listening to this tonight. It's just an opinion to try to bring some transparency. No one is throwing anyone under the bus, as Councilwoman Harley said. So now we're doing FOIA because now council members can't come together and just say, this is just how we feel. This is opinion. It's not even an ordinance and we're violating FOIA. Are you kidding me? I'm in support of this. It's just an opinion of some council people asking the chief to stand up. He gets paid $160,000 and he can't just do a press conference. And I like the chief, we get along fine. This is not throwing anybody under the bus. But guess what? These 50, 60 people that's on here, participants, they live in my district. They call me up. I have these people, I received the phone calls all hours of the night, banging on my door. I live in the community. So some people, as Harley said, don't get the calls. They so out of touch evidently, like this is, they just can't believe this is happening. It's just an opinion. Read about it. It's a resolution.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Oliver. Councilwoman Gray, for your second round.
Thank you. I have to reiterate what Councilwoman Darby said. I've been on council now for 2 sessions, 1.5, a couple years. I repeatedly complained about getting legislation like 2 or 3 days before, and sometimes there were 15, 20, 100-page contracts. So this is nothing new. I mean, this has been happening. And it was always the law department or someone was holding it up or changes that needed to be made. So regardless of whether someone's going to try to take this to FOIA or not, precedent will speak for itself. And there's lots of examples of where I've gotten legislation, multiple pages, like a day or two before council. And for that many pages, you don't have time to read it, nor to ask or get an opinion about it from anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Is a parliamentarian or someone from law department present, because I am concerned about the somewhat of a notice aspect. I mean, it was the day of the agenda and not even 2 days before. So I am somewhat concerned. Again, we want to be models for our residents. in terms of transparency, and making sure that the public can even be involved. And we could have even had more supporters out. So I would like, if someone from the law department, can we have, regarding the notice requirement, has that been met at all?
So, Council Member Zach, I'm here as parliamentarian. I didn't know if Daniel, Chief of Staff, was on the line to talk to legal advice provided. So I wanted to give him an option to speak.
Hi, this is Chief of Staff Walker. Councilman Johnson, to your exact question, the law department did issue an opinion, which it did state there were time constraints in forming the opinion, where it shared that it's not so much a question of the notice of the item being placed on the agenda. There was a question shared from the law department about the urgency of the matter, and if it met the scrutiny provided for the Delaware Attorney General's opinion that was issued. I will also share that council rules do dictate President Congo has the ability and the purview to determine what is substantial and needing of committee review. So my response to the parliamentarian's question would be, it was not shared so much about notice, more so about urgency of the matter at hand.
Understood. Okay, so it's somewhat unclear then.
No.
Okay. All right. That was the only question I had.
Okay, thank you.
Not true.
I don't see any other council members with their hands raised. Councilwoman Darby, for your second round.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So a few things that I want to hit on. If we're going to check for FOIA for this, will we be able to check for FOIA for at least for me, for the whole year that I've been in council? Because there's been problematic legislations for me too. So I'm willing to work with other council people on that. We can just go down that rabbit hole and start going for me just 1 year. I just want to say for my closing comments, like, we're tired of talking to Wilmington PD leadership and giving solutions. The community has been speaking forever. My grandmother and great grandfather talked about police brutality. Older people in the community talk about police brutality. This is something that has been happening forever. And it's time that we put pressure on Wilmington PD to tell them that they have to be held accountable. And for me, it's also not an individual too. For me, there's systemic issues and systemic systems in play that are used to brutalize and cause violence towards communities. So for me, it's not an individual either, because no matter who sits in that seat, if it's Chief Tracy or Chief Darby or whoever, we still need police reform in the system. So I just wanted to add that, and that I am in support of this legislation, and thank you.
Thank you. And for your second round, Councilwoman Cabrera.
Yes, I did just want to mention, and I agree with Councilwoman Darby that maybe we should do a review of the last minute legislation that has been put on the agenda and voted on to make sure that we are within the letter of the law in terms of, the parliamentary procedure. It's not so much the topic of the evening, it's about procedure. And as Chief of Staff said, that at your discretion, you can determine that something is urgent, but 6 hours prior to the council meeting, something can be placed. There's an exception to place something on the agenda. And that's our parliamentary rules, that as long as you have 6 hours. And I also agree with Councilman Gray, we should be given as much notice as possible so that we can review the information. And, I just, in terms of the resolution, I do just want to state again, I am not opposed to the things that my council members have said. I do agree. Of course, I've only been sitting now this round 1 year, so I don't have the previous experiences that my council members and colleagues have in dealing with the police department and Chief Tracy. And I do agree that there should be reform and more transparency. I think we also need to be battling to change the rules as they are in the legislature in terms of more transparency. There is a lot of protection, a lot of power given to police departments in our nation, and the choices that they make are life and death. And we've seen how some of those choices have not been good. So I do agree that we definitely have to look at how we are policing here in our city and beyond. What I'm saying is I want to see more transparency, information. I'm willing to give the chief an opportunity to improve the communication with the community and with us. And if I don't see that happening, then, you know, I too might say, hey, I'm not happy. Things have to change. Let's get a fresh pair of eyes or ears here. At the same time, I'm being respectful that it's the mayor's choice to make as who is going to run his department, but that he too should maybe get involved in making sure that the communication is open with us as council members and with the community so that we don't have to have these difficult conversations and that we can work together to support the initiatives in our city to make it a better place for everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I will end with my closing comments. Someone put it very succinctly when he said that our police department has a very toxic environment internally. And it's interesting to see the myriad of reasons why people are supporting this. Mine, honestly, is not regarding homicides or crime, because I don't think that the police chief or our police department I don't think that's their responsibility. Some council members touched on it, whether it's our education system or court system. That's not why I put together this resolution. I think it's extremely urgent, and for those who don't see that, I can't really empathize, because we have been, and the community has been begging for something from our chief for years. Again, this is not my first conversation with Chief Tracy during this session of council to please do something to increase the diversity in our police department. He has been extremely resistant. So I don't know what else to do. I've had the conversations. The community has shown up and had the conversations. The Wilmington PD has had the conversations, but it is falling on deaf ears. So the urgency is absolutely right now. And just think about how powerful of a statement this could be. We've had conversations, but they have never worked. Never. Since I've been on council, they have never worked. We can't continue to have these same conversations, because that's what they want us to do, is continue to talk about it and not take any action. This will be an extremely important action that represents our community and represents the WPD. And for those council members who are on the call, just think about who called you today to get you to not support this resolution. Just think about that for a second. There were calls from former council members. There were calls from a myriad of people who did not want to see this resolution pass, because they know the effect that it can have. And why would they not want to hold our police chief accountable for increasing diversity? Why would they not want our police chief to increase his communication with our community? That makes no sense to me. And I hold the mayor responsible as well. I think Councilwoman Gray may have touched on it, a couple other council members. This is his choice. This is his responsibility to make sure that his man steps up to the plate and reacts to what we're talking about and reacts to what our residents are talking about. I didn't just come up with this overnight. This has been years in the making. So I don't want that to fall on deaf ears from my colleagues. This has been a conversation that we have been talking about for years, and that's just us. Since I've been on council, previous councils have talked about it. Our community has complained about it. WPD has never been as diverse as it should be, and all we're asking for is change. I think this will be an extremely powerful message that we send to our mayor and to our police chief, and most importantly, to our community, that we are tired of the conversations and we want to see change. not only our community, but our WPD officers as well. And with that, I am going to I'll call the clerk for the roll, please.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Darby,
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley,
Yes.
Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Present.
Councilman Field,
No.
Councilwoman Cabrera,
No.
Councilman Spadola,
No.
Councilwoman Walsh,
No.
President Congo.
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
6 yeas, 4 nays, 1 present, and 1 absent.
I declare it adopted. Councilmember Spadola,
No legislation tonight, sir.
Councilmember Walsh,
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have legislation to present. A resolution.
No.
No.
Council
President.
President.
I believe I
Excuse
have a resolution to present for you, Council President, before Councilwoman Walsh.
Yes, you do.
okay, thank you, Councilwoman Cabrera.
No worries. So this is going to be presented, and I'm going to read it in full, and this is on behalf of Council President Congo.
I have to assign the number.
Number 0127.
Okay, 1 second. Resolution 22002, Agenda 0127. Whereas Councilmember Rashima J. Dixon submitted a letter to Council President Ernest Trippy Congo II, resigning her position as a council member at large, effective as of January 7, 2022, and Council President Congo accepted it with sincere regret. And whereas City Charter Section 2-101 and City Code Section 2-34 collectively provide that when a vacancy occurs in the office of a council member, City Council shall certify that a vacancy exists by resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Wilmington that it is with deep regret that effective as of January 7, 2022, this council accepts the resignation of Rashima J. Dixon, City Council Member at Large. Be it further resolved, the City Council, as required by City Charter Section 2-101 and City Code Section 2-34, formally certifies that an at-large council position is vacant as of January 7, 2022, and it will be filled by the appointment of a duly qualified successor in accordance with City Charter Section 2-101 and City Code Section 2-34. Thank you. Okay, the motion.
Motion to, let me see here. Is this
The president.
Yeah, Mr. President, would this be the first and second reading, or we're just moving it forward?
We're moving it forward.
Okay. So I take a motion to accept the legislation.
Received, recorded, and filed. Resolution.
Received, recorded, and file. Sorry.
Adopted by yea, nay vote.
Okay.
Yes, we just need to move. Okay, thank you. It's been properly moved and second that the resolution be received, recorded, and filed.
It was moved. It wasn't second.
Second.
Thank you.
Yes, it was
Now.
second. And adopted by yea, nay vote on the question. Councilwoman Cabrera.
Yeah, this resolution is being presented by City Council for Council's review and approval. This resolution accepts the resignation of Council Member Rashima Dixon and formally certifies that a vacancy exists in an at-large position, which shall be filed by appointment of a duly qualified successor in accordance with City Charter Section 2-101 and City Code Selection 2-34.
And seeing no hands raised from council members. Clerk, please call for the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Darby, Councilwoman Darby,
She doesn't have to come.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley. Councilwoman Harley. Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Field,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cabrera,
Yes.
Councilman Spadola,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Congo.
Yes,
9 yeas and 3 absent.
declared adopted. All right, this time I'm going to go back to Councilwoman Walsh.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I have a resolution to present.
Resolution 22003, Agenda 0128, whereas pursuant to Section 2-363 of the City Code, City Council deem it necessary and proper to specify the requirements for review.
President, I move that be known as the reading of that resolution, that it be received, recorded, and filed and adopted by a yea/nay vote. And it needs a second.
Someone please second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded that be known that the resolution be received, recorded, filed, and adopted by yea and nay vote. On the question,
Mr. President, this resolution authorizes the Office of Emergency Management grant application from the Delaware Emergency Management Agency for 2021 Emergency Management Performance Grant Funds to the tune of $237,000. These funds are used to support the operation of the Emergency Management and Emergency Operations Center. No matching money.
thank you. Seeing no hands raised by any council members. Clerk, please call for the roll.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Councilwoman Darby,
Yes.
Councilwoman Oliver,
Yes.
Councilwoman Harley, Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Field,
Yes.
Councilwoman Cabrera,
Yes.
Councilman Spadola,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh,
Yes.
President Congo.
Yes,
10 yeas and 2 absent.
declared adopted.
That's all the legislation I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This time we will move to petitions and communication, starting with Councilwoman Walsh.
I don't have anything this evening, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Spadola.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cabrera.
Yes, Mr. President, I just want to mention fire safety again. It has been a very distraught week in the news, and not just here in our own Wilmington with fires, but to just read the news and see how, whether it was a Christmas tree or a heater that was plugged in, that may have been an old heater, people trying to stay warm because we are living through some dire times and the economics of it all. But again, to really just try to implore of our residents, if you are having difficulty with being able to pay the bills and heat your home, please reach out for some of the assistance programs that are out there. Call 211 for the state, call 311 for the city. We may be able to help. At the same time, just fire safety in general. It's just a tough time of the year. We've had some very cold weather, and it's going to probably get worse. We are in the thick of things. And that's just a concern that I have when you have children, and then it's hard to get families out. And we've seen some tragedy right here in our own city when it comes to these fires as well, Philadelphia and New York. So that's all I want to say this evening. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Field.
Nothing to add, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson.
I just want to thank everyone for participating in the 10th Annual MLK Cleanup. We had both residents and community leaders from the West Side and all over the city to clean up in the time of COVID. I know a lot of service activities were disrupted, but fortunately we were able to gather out there safely to clean up the 7th Street Bridge and the Cool Springs Tilton area. So I applaud everyone for coming out and thank you for joining us. And because of the weather, the actual parade vendor portion, that's actually rescheduled for President's Day weekend. So it's going to be Monday, February 21st. They still, Westside Grove still is looking for vendors. So please contact them if you're interested in being on display if you're a small business. As we look forward to, seeing people in person, hopefully by then. And with that, the only other thing, I do have a comment just briefly about police reform and what we're doing. I think we've talked ad nauseum about what's going on, but what we need to do is be a cohesive and connected city. It can't be black versus white. It can't be this side or that side. But there does need to be a sense of urgency. There needs to be a sense of getting things done, namely a consultant, namely getting the Citizen Review Board up, because pursuant to the legislation in the last session, we were supposed to have it actually implemented in January 2022. And here we are in January 2022, and the board is not yet standing. So that's a top priority for City Council, working with Council President, is to light a fire and to get things done. So it's more than just talk, it's actual action, because people are dying out there. There needs to be things put in place to build community trust, because that's all works together. And so, we are going to be working there. Hopefully will be some progress in negotiations with the administration, and we can move forward as a city. Be safe, everyone.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Darby.
I have nothing for tonight, Council President.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gray.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to thank the public for making use of public comment. I think it gives strength to what we're trying to do. And it also, I think, makes, at least me, a better council person when I hear the varied opinions and when I realize that people are interested in their city and interested in change. So I just thank everyone that participates in public comment, and I invite more people to join us and to give us their opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to echo your comments, Councilwoman Gray, and just thank the community for continuing to engage with us here on City Council. If you ever need to contact any of us, please call us at our office at 576-2140. Again, our number here at City Council is 302-576-2140. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Hello, second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.